Hey there, it's Melissa Brunetti, and welcome to the Mind Your Own Karma podcast. Hey there, Karma Crew. Thanks for listening in on another episode of Mind Your Own Karma, the Adoption Chronicles. My guest today is someone that I met through Fireside Adoptees, the Facebook group for adoptees only, and her name is Nicole Koharik. Let me tell you a little bit about Nicole. Nicole is a domestic transracial adoptee born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. She grew up knowing she was adopted. Her father, a decorated Marine turned Catholic priest, adopted her after she had been left with him when she was 3 years old. Mother's Day has always been particularly difficult for Nicole, despite being a mother herself. Having been raised by a single father, it defined the fact that she did not fit in. Early in her marketing career, Nicole joined the adoption community through volunteer work with Adoption Network Cleveland, a nonprofit that supports everyone touched by adoption. After serving on the Special Events Committee, Nicole was asked to join the board of directors. Through this work, she accepted adoption as a complex, lifelong, intergenerational journey with ongoing impact for all whose lives are touched by it. This epiphany helped her realize her feelings of pain, confusion, and self-doubt were a natural part of the adoptee journey and inspired her to dive into the work of healing. Nicole spent years on what she calls her journey of self-discovery, working to understand how being abandoned and adopted shaped her thought patterns, decisions, and relationships. This journey inspired her to share her truth to validate and uplift her fellow adoptees. In 2019, she launched her blog and social media platforms, The Adoptee and Me, a place to share the journey of self-discovery. Since then, Nicole has shared her lessons learned about identity, change, loss, and love, aiming to inspire adoptees to embrace their inner adoptee and build healing connections. Since 2021, Nicole has served as a member of the Fireside Adoptees leadership team, where she leverages her 20-plus years of marketing and communications expertise to help guide the organization's mission and evolution in service to adoptees at every stage of their journey. A few years ago, Nicole embarked on a new chapter of her adoptee journey to find the mother who left her behind at the age of 3. The search began with her original birth certificate, involved multiple third-party organizations, and lasted much longer than anticipated. This latest chapter of her adoptee journey inspires Nicole to share her story about the emotional roller coaster of search, self-discovery, loss, and hope. Here is my interview with Nicole Koharik. So we are welcoming Nicole to the show today. I'm so excited. We've been trying to get you on the show for a long time. It's been kind of hard to coordinate schedules, but you're finally here. So I'm happy to invite you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Melissa. It's so exciting to be here, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, Nicole and I met through Fireside Adoptees, which I mentioned a ton on the show here. And I do not know your story, so this is going to be fun. So we're going to just jump right in here. There's so much I want to talk about. So let's just start with, what were the circumstances? What do you know about your adoption?
Well, it's such a loaded question, because there's what I thought I knew, what I grew up with, and that information. And then there's the recent information from the last few years of the search experience.
All right.
So that's kind of where I am on my journey, is working through the realities of the new information I found out recently. And what I can tell you is that when I was very young, I always knew I was adopted. And my father, my adoptive father, actually adopted me as a single parent. So I was raised by an amazing single dad. And he told me, what I knew of my story when I was very young was that your mother left you with me to babysit one day and never returned.
Oh, wow.
And that is the mystery that I grew up thinking about
Oh, my goodness.
on almost a daily basis. Where did she go? Who is my mother? What happened? Why did she leave me with him? So it's been definitely an interesting journey. And I think that's, when I think about being adopted, it's definitely a lifelong journey. And when I started viewing it that way, it brought me more peace, because I know that it's going to continue. And even though, I learned a lot recently, there's always going to be a next phase. So it's always changing.
It always does seem like there's 3 stories and then what really happened, right?
Exactly. Or like the edited version of the parts that may be true, but the detail of, the why. Like, one of the things that I thought about a lot through my childhood was, what's her story?
Yeah.
And for a long time, I didn't want to search because I didn't want to disrupt my world. But I ended up, actually doing that a few years ago. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. I'm sure even my side of the story isn't totally accurate, but it's my perception of what happened. So that's my reality and my truth. And I don't think that's a wrong thing.
I love that. I think that is one of the keys of this, being adopted and coping with it, is realizing that it's all about your truth. And
Yeah.
that's up to you to understand and to define. And knowing that is something that brings me a lot of peace now.
Yeah. So you said you always knew you were adopted. And so you just grew up with one father. And so how do you see adoption affecting you growing up, being adopted, even into the teen years? You looking back, because I'm sure at the time you don't even realize, but
Yeah. Well, it was kind of, I had to know because I always felt out of place. So I'm a transracial adoptee. I didn't
mm,
find that out with data until recently, in doing my DNA, but I never looked like anyone. I didn't look like my father. I didn't look like anyone at school, in my family, in my community, even. And I didn't see any diversity until college. And that is actually, ironically, or maybe not so ironically, when I started to feel like I was, starting to discover who I really am. We
mm,
talk about identity challenges with adoptees, and I definitely faced that. And being a child, really felt kind of like an alien. I knew I was loved, but I never felt like I really belonged anywhere.
right. So growing up, getting into romantic relationships, because of a lot of adoptees have trouble attaching with attachment issues. Did you see that playing out at all in romantic relationships?
It's interesting. I saw challenges with romantic relationships, but definitely not attachment issues, almost the opposite.
Mm,
I'd say, attach a little bit too much. There's a funny story about one that I wrote about in my blog, when I was younger, that I was reflecting back and realizing, once you come out of the fog, you realize all of these things that have happened
yeah.
have somehow connecting back to your adoption trauma.
Yeah.
And this is one that I've told on Fireside, before, and I think it's all about my abandonment issues. I literally chased this poor boy who was supposed to be my boyfriend in 3rd grade around the playground, asking him, because I heard a rumor that he liked Monica, and I chased him around and said, "Me or Monica, me or Monica." Like, I was a very shy child, but as soon as I thought my relationship in the 3rd grade was at risk, I was like, I need a decision. Like, so I was very territorial, and I was actually that way with my father too. He told me he tried to date and that I would insert myself between him and his date. So, that security was really, really important to me. And I actually, ended up, I'd say the opposite of having attachment issues. I attached a little too much and probably had some control issues too, because I didn't want to lose anyone ever again.
Yeah, right. So how was it growing up with your dad? Good experience?
It was a good experience. My father is an amazing person, and I know it's, you know, we talk a lot in adoptee circles about, being grateful and how
Mhm.
terrible that is. I think it's terrible when someone projects that onto us. If
Yeah.
they say, you should be grateful. No one should ever project how someone should feel for their lived experience. But I will say that I am grateful for my father. He's an amazing man. He has a great story. He was a American hero in Vietnam and Purple Heart veteran. I have all his medals, and he loved me unconditionally. He still does. He's been my rock. He is my first teacher, my first love. He taught me to believe in myself way before I did. And he was amazing. So I was fortunate in that way, but I still had that deep down pain that, his love wasn't enough. No, that's one of my key messages. No adoptive parent's love is enough to heal those wounds.
Yeah.
And I learned that firsthand because I was loved and I had a great experience with him, but I still felt that pain. I still felt like an alien. I still felt like I didn't belong. And so I know I'm proof that love isn't enough to heal that wound.
Yeah. It doesn't matter, how much they try, how much that adoptive parent tries, that there's nothing they can do. And it's not anything that they necessarily did wrong or right or anything like that. It's just there and it's going to be there,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's important for adoptive parents to know that.
Yes.
Because I want them to try. I want them to love their children unconditionally and be that support that they need, and be their self-confidence when they don't have any. But at the same time, they can't think that that's going to be enough, and they have to create that space to really let the adoptee explore their feelings and ask questions and have those uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, I think there is a ton of education needed for the adoptive parents, because they have no clue what they're really getting into or how to really help that child adjust. And they're not a puppy,
Exactly. I don't
Yeah.
understand why, and some kind of mandatory training or classes are required. I think, when I think about advocacy work, that's what I want to see. It's so important, and that would make such a difference.
Right. So did you have any siblings growing up?
I did not. I was a spoiled only child. And by spoiled, I don't mean with material goods.
Right.
I actually joined Toastmasters early in my career because I was, like I said, I was a very shy child, didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. So I was quiet and kind of observed everything and kept my mouth shut, unless I was in a comfortable space. But I joined Toastmasters because my career depended on it, and I knew I had to do presentations.
That is terrifying, Nicole.
Oh my gosh.
Toastmaster.
It was terrifying, but I threw myself into it because I knew that it would make me better.
Yeah.
And it was a safe space to mess up and to have people count your ums and give you that feedback that you don't get otherwise. So I did it, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
And I kind of have a history of throwing myself in the deep end to learn and grow, but growth is a personal value of mine, so that's important.
Sure.
But when I joined Toastmasters, I had to give an icebreaker speech about myself, and this is way before I was really out of the fog. And I said that I was an only child, and I was a spoiled only child. And I said, but I wasn't spoiled by material things. I was spoiled by love. And my adoptive family was more like a fan club than a family because they were very, my dad and his sister and my aunts and uncles and cousins were all super supportive of me. So that definitely made a difference. But like we said, it doesn't change. And that's the part of my story I wasn't telling. I was only telling the happy part in the beginning.
Right.
And now I'm at that point where I'm very in touch with who I am, my truth, my pain, my journey, my transformation. And I want to share that story to help other people, get to that next step wherever they are.
So what did happen? You said in college, you kind of started finding, yourself and exploring. And is that the point where you kind of were starting to think about your biological family, or?
In college, I would say I was kind of independent for the first time. I went away to school, but not far, right? So I went, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I stayed in state for college, but I went away and stayed at the dorm. So, and I was kind of a homebody and I liked my safety net. And my dad and my aunt, his sister, who was a big influence in my life, both said, you know what, you need to grow up and be independent. So you're going to stay at the dorm and you can come home on weekends. And I was like, what?
You're like Velcro or
Yeah.
peeling the Velcro off.
Yes. And I was like, wait, this is my safety net. It's scary out there. But I'm glad they did that because I learned so much and I learned, I grew, I failed. And it's interesting because my career is in marketing and communications, but I was undecided for a very long time, my first year. And I found a mentor. And again, reflecting back, thinking about my adoption and how that's affected almost everything. And I was looking for strong female mentors and people to guide me in life because I didn't have that. I didn't have anyone to call mother, and I was always missing that. So this professor, Dr. Plude, I was so impressed by her. She had a Harvard PhD and she was my mass communication professor. I was taking like basic courses, exploring things. And I went to her one day and I said, Dr. Plude, I don't know what I want to do. I need a major and I'm undecided and I want a career and I don't know what I want to do. And she helped me so much. She said, you know what, let's not think about the decision because that's obviously weighing heavy on you. I need a direction. Let's think about what you like to do. She said, take the course catalog, look at, kind of the options, come back to me, tell me what you're attracted to, what you're interested in, and then we'll talk about it. And it worked out great. I went back to her. I showed her the classes I was interested in. And she said, you know what? We just finalized a new major called Applied Communication. Today, they call it Public Relations. And she said, everything that you picked aligns with that major. So I think that's your North Star. That's what you're meant to do. And it is. And I love my career. So that moment was very empowering for me to, for the first time, kind of know what I wanted to do with my life. Yeah. But it took, I'd say even longer than that to really realize my identity, because at that point I was like, okay, I'm a communications person, so I would define myself based on the things that I did and not who I was. And that took a lot more exploration and self discovery. And I took myself on that journey because I felt like I needed to know, and it was a gap.
So when did that journey start, do you think? Was there something that triggered it?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I just know that I would be in conversations as an adult with people, and people would be talking about, oh, I like this and this is my preference, and all these people had these preferences and experiences and seemed very grounded in who they were. And when I would reflect, I've always been very reflective. I'd reflect on those same questions when I was alone. I realized I didn't have answers. So I said, well, this isn't right. And I knew that the reason I didn't have answers is because I didn't know where I came from. I think was in the fog at that point, but I knew that something was missing. And then I sat down and I said, okay, what are your favorite things? What do you like? What makes you happy? And a lot of that work actually was triggered by a major life event. And that was my divorce, when I found myself, kind of rebuilding myself.
Yeah.
I was trying to think about, well, what would make me happy and what do I need in life? And I didn't really know. So the work of recovering from divorce actually helped with my adoptee journey as well.
Yeah, I have a similar story. So what helped you?
What helped me back then
Yeah.
was my self-work and my self-reflection. And I purposely created space to self-reflect. And I ended up doing that through writing. And it's interesting because I launched my blog in 2019, but I had been kind of reflecting on these questions and writing for myself to process who am I and what do I care about and what are my values and what matters to me. Really big questions for a long time before then. And I've always loved the creative process of writing. And it's interesting because it helped me not only get clarity, but also process my feelings about being adopted. And I will tell you, my husband jokes about it, right? Because he calls it dark poetry. But in the darkest moments when I was really wondering about my mother and where she was and who she was and if she was still alive, I would just write. I would write about her. I would write about my feelings. I would, I would get emotional, but I would get it out and I would get it on paper. And it was really empowering. And that's why I started writing, my story more publicly, because I realized it was healing for me. And then eventually I realized that it was helping others too, who had similar feelings.
Yeah. So when you were going through this process, did you realize you were coming out of the fog at that time? I mean,
Um,
did you even know what the term the fog at that time? Were you in the adoptee community?
what's interesting is I first entered the adoptee community literally in person, not online, early in my career, because I was a volunteer for a local organization called Adoption Network Cleveland that
Mm,
supports everyone touched by adoption. And I was doing that as part of my career. I wanted to give back to my community. I wanted to, get experience, and I wanted to make an impact, a positive impact. That's just who I am. So I, again, was self-reflecting, well, how can I give back to my community? I'm like, well, I'm adopted, maybe this organization, I can help this organization. So I was definitely still very much in the fog at that time. But then through the process of engaging with other people who were touched by adoption, both adoptees, adoptive parents, and birth parents, I definitely started to come out of the fog through all of that interaction. And I started out on the special events committee as a volunteer. And I was so passionate about the organization and loved the work and the people that I didn't realize that I was starting a healing process by being around others for the first time who
mm,
had feelings like mine. That's why I was so connected to the work. I was asked to, by the executive director, I was asked to join the board. And that led me even deeper into this realization of, wow, we are here to help people like me. And I didn't realize I had a problem,
right.
so kind of ironic, but I'm grateful for that experience, because I think I probably would have stayed in the fog much longer had I not had that experience. And I would never be where I am today on this journey, and feeling the peace that I have now if that didn't happen when it did in my life. And it took a long time after that, even to get to this point. But that was definitely a major inflection point on this journey.
Yeah. I think for me, just, I thought, oh, there's these adoptee groups on Facebook. I never thought about like joining, that'd be fun, So I get on there and I was just like, what is happening? I was just so shocked. And it wasn't that I didn't realize that some of that was going on. I didn't feel the permission to feel it
Oh, okay.
until I went on these groups and I was like, wait a minute, we can say that, we can like, we're not supposed to say that,
Right,
or whatever.
right.
And it just gave me the permission, even though I knew it was there, it gave me the permission to be like, me too,
I love that. The
Yeah.
permission. That's exactly right. I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
And
How
I
did
feel
you
like
feel?
I knew there were, like, I had feelings of, uneasiness, but I didn't know until I was immersed in the local adoption community that those feelings were connected to being adopted. That
Yeah.
was the epiphany
Right.
where I was like, whoa. And I think that pushed me out of the fog. But I heard other people's coming out of the fog stories. And I have to say, it wasn't a bad experience for me. It wasn't painful. It was more of a relief because I had these
Mm,
feelings that I recognized. I just didn't know where they were coming from. And
yeah.
now I had the answers. I knew where they were coming from. And I knew that I had, trauma and abandonment issues and loss. And I was like, well, no wonder,
Yeah.
and I suddenly felt okay and better about who I am and myself. And I didn't feel shame anymore. And I think that is a major stigma of being adopted, that shame. Some people don't even as adults tell other people. And I've been around, I'm very loud and proud, obviously, but I wish everyone could experience that. And that's another reason I tell my story, is because I love our adoptee community and the support that
Yeah.
we have, but I want to reach the people who are in the fog to help them
Mhm.
realize, what, it's okay. It's okay
Yeah.
to feel that way. It's normal. And guess what? You're not alone.
Right. Exactly. So how did you feel? Maybe you felt it in that group in Cleveland, from the beginning, but for me, like I said, coming on social media, it was like hitting a wall. I had no idea the trauma that was out there and, all those things.
Oh, absolutely. That
How
was
did
very
you feel? Yeah.
eye-opening. Very eye-opening for me, especially because I was thinking about my experience, growing up with a very supportive adoptive father. And then I was hearing all of these stories about, very terrible, terrible
Yeah.
situations with abuse and neglect and the adoptive parents and the narcissism. And oh, it just broke my heart, and it still does.
Yeah.
And that's why communities like Fireside are so important, because I want to be there for everyone who's still hurting. And we all have some pain, but oh my gosh, so many people, so many adoptees are suffering, and it breaks my heart, and they need support. And that's so important to me. I wish every adoptee had a support network, and knew that they were not alone.
Yeah. My podcast was totally something different when I started. And then I maybe, 2 months in, um, after joining these groups, I was like, I have to pivot my entire podcast now. I have to do this. It was meant to be. It really was meant to be. But
Absolutely.
it impacted me that much to where I just like, nope, I'm going, doing something different.
Well,
Um,
thank you for doing that, because it's so important for adoptees to have a place, to have a voice. So many feel unheard and unseen, and you're helping
yeah.
in a way that's going to make a difference in many lives. So thank you.
Yeah, now's the time we're just, we're rising up. I mean, everybody, the whole constellation is getting involved in the movement, which is so great. I mean, even adoptive parents and, you know, even hearing the birth mothers' stories. I've had a few birth mothers on the show, and it just gives me so much compassion. I can't imagine walking away from your baby, not knowing who is going to raise them, thinking you're giving them a better life. That's what they're told,
Hmm.
and just walking away. I can't imagine. I can't imagine
I
the trauma that would cause.
I know. And I have to say, hearing the stories of birth mothers and the community, and seeing my original birth certificate, and realizing, my mother was young and not from the state, and had me as a teenager in this state, but was from another state. I quickly connected the dots before I searched, and had it just gave me so much empathy for her. My
Mhm.
anger and my frustration and all the dark poetry I wrote, just suddenly all of that heaviness just lifted. And I was like, wow, I knew something had to be wrong. I knew
Yeah.
that she, was going through it. And gosh, I'm so glad that I have that information, and that I've heard birth mother stories, because now I have so much empathy for birth mothers. It's really sad. And, society, just like adoptees, does not view
They're
them
not supportive. Yeah.
well either. And it's really sad
Yeah.
because
They have their narrative that they have to live by too, like, oh, you did the
exactly
best for your child. You did the right thing, blah, 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 all that
right,
narrative too. They have the same thing. And
right. And then they have to
there's
carry that
always,
loss and pain the rest of their lives.
yeah, there's always a story behind the adoption,
Hmm.
leading up to. There's got to be a story. So I don't know if you want to share any of what you found out, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, but I kind of want to hear what happened.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, oh gosh, it was a few years ago. I woke up on a milestone birthday and suddenly had a panic. I was reflecting on my life as I usually do on my birthdays. And I sat up in bed and I said, oh my gosh, I think it's like about my own mortality, but it hit me really hard and suddenly. And I said, if I don't look now, I might never have this opportunity and I could die with the regret that I never searched.
Mm,
And in that moment, I said, I have to do this. It was it was wild. And it was so overwhelming. And it almost felt like it wasn't just me like thinking this, like it felt like it was inspired and I needed it. This was a calling. I needed to do this for myself. And one thing I learned through the search process is that I assumed incorrectly that, oh, when I decide to search, when I'm ready, the information will be there. And I learned that's not the case. So I worked on, it took multiple searches, 3 searches, in fact, to finally find the information I was seeking. And I still have a lot of questions and some puzzle pieces that are missing. The first search on uncovered some information about my birth father. And I found out he was local, and I found out he was African American, and I found out that he lived here in Cleveland, but not much more information. And then I continued to search for my mother because she was nowhere to be found. And all of the documentation that was uncovered in my search was more so about my father, and there wasn't a lot. So I actually proceeded through my relationships with Fireside. I met a search angel through Fireside who helped me connect with DNA Angels. And I went to DNA Angels and I said, I've done the search process. I still can't find my mother. I don't know if she's alive or dead. This is the information I was able to find. I know she's from South Carolina. And I know, she was this age and this is her name. And that's all I have. And a little bit about some other relatives. So I also did DNA, and that was another letdown. I thought when you do DNA, oh, the answers are just there. And if you have close family members, they'll want to talk to you. And that's not true either.
yeah.
And then, so I found a first cousin of my mother's and I was thrilled. And I said, oh, this is it. This is what I needed. And no response.
Wow.
So then I found him on Facebook and no response. And then eventually I kept trying. He responded, very cryptic answers. So cryptic that I couldn't even tell if she was alive or not.
Mm,
And at this point, what a roller coaster. I just could not believe I cannot find this woman. I'm like, there's documentation. There's, all these records that should be out there. If she's dead, there has to be a death certificate.
right.
What's going on? Why is she so elusive? And why is this family member, acting this way? So then DNA Angels did the first search, and I applied through the process. I highly recommend to any adoptees who are searching, and especially like mine have a tough case to crack. an unsolved case, go to DNA Angels.
Yeah.
Well, I did that, and they said they exhausted all their options. They found more information. I gave them all the information from the first search, and they still couldn't find her. So they closed my case. I was depressed.
Oh
I
gosh.
couldn't believe that I finally decided to be brave and to do this, and to spend all this time and effort and energy and emotional roller coaster, and still no clarity.
Mm.
And then Kelly Grace from DNA Angels actually engaged with me to interview me about my unsolved case, to write a blog for DNA Angels. And she felt so bad for me. She said, you know what? We're going to find your mother. She said her first name. We're going to find her. And I said, what? She said, no, I'm serious. We're going to find her. And then a few days later, she sent me a Facebook Messenger message and said, I have a surprise for you. And she reopened my case with 6 of her best angels.
Wow.
And
I got
I
the
could
chills.
not believe it. I was so touched and so happy that I had another shot after I thought, it was time to give up. I never wanted to give up.
Yeah.
But I think God opened the door through Kelly, literally my angel. And it worked. It took a while, but this new search worked, and they found her information, and I will never forget. It was November of last year. I was working, and all of the communication is done through Facebook Messenger with DNA Angels. So you have a record of it, and all the documents are there, and it's, quick communication. So I was, always looking. And I remember I was in a meeting at work about our new website, and I got the message, and I was trying not to look distracted, but it said, we found her, and I just lost it. I didn't have any information, but I just was in such disbelief and so happy and so scared that my body got 10 degrees hotter.
Surprised you didn't pass out.
I almost did. I had to excuse myself from the meeting, and I couldn't even say anything. I just literally left the Zoom meeting and walked away because I didn't know what to do. And I looked at the messages and said, I'm sorry, Nicole, she's deceased.
Oh.
And again, I was shocked. Again, I was in disbelief, and again, the emotional roller coaster search, having hope again after so many missed attempts, failed attempts, and then finally that hope being taken away yet again. But now looking back, I've learned that moment changed things for me, because while she's deceased, and I was really, down about that for a long time, that was the worst Thanksgiving I think I ever had, because it was November and I just wasn't into it, and I was really sad. One, I will say the adoptee community was amazing. I wrote my heart out and I shared what happened, and so many just outpouring of love and support from all my fellow adoptees on Instagram and Facebook was amazing. So that helped uplift me. And then also, in addition to finding her and finding that she was deceased, I could not believe it. She died in 2019. That is the year that I started my blog. And maybe that's why I was so compelled to search just connecting the dots, it's really miraculous. And I learned that there was some family still in South Carolina, some cousins and other people that DNA Angels did put me in touch with. So I was able to connect with them and hear about her as a young person and some stories about her growing up from other people. And at the time, it meant a lot to me. I was too sad to really realize how valuable that was. But now when I look back, I am so grateful to have learned about her and finally heard her story through other people's memories. And that's what I have. And
Yeah.
you know what? That means everything. I wish
Mm.
I wasn't too late and that we could have met, but at least I know her story, and I know that she, I wasn't a secret, and that, she was running away from a really, challenging situation. So
Mm.
she did what she had to do at the time,
Yeah.
because she wasn't, you know, she wasn't able to take care of me, and barely able to take care of herself. So I have so much empathy for her, and I'm so grateful that I heard about her and received pictures,
Yeah.
which is something that I never had. So I love my pictures, and I will just have to hold on to her memory.
Yeah. Any resemblances or you see?
Yes, she's like the blonde me. Yeah, we have like a very similar face shape, like the very like kind of angular square face. She definitely has the same face shape. And then actually an adoptee friend of mine, when I posted about it, made a side by side picture. I posted her pictures, and she made a side by side picture of her and me next to each other, and
Oh, wow.
that was really touching. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Do you have any siblings on either side? Do you know?
Okay, so the last time I did a podcast interview, I had just found out that same day that
Oh, gosh.
I just was in contact for the first time that I had a biological half brother that she had later. He's younger than me, and he's living in California. Um, I had one great conversation with him, and I lost touch. I actually was planning on trying to go see him when I went to California for a recent trade show
Hmm.
conference for my work. And I don't know what happened. He disappeared. So I don't hold it against him. I'm just disappointed. And I think
Yeah.
he has his own struggles, and I have to accept that. But again, just like my mother, I don't have her in my life, but I have other people's memories of her. I don't have my brother either, but I know he exists. And I had one great 2-hour conversation with him that helped me achieve even more peace, because what he told me was so amazing. I had no idea what to expect. And he
Mm.
said, you know what? She called you Nikki, which is interesting because my whole
Yeah.
life, when people would call me Nikki, I'm like, no, I'm Nicole. But yeah, she referred to me as Nikki. I was not a secret. And she told him about me. And she said that, that she wanted to find me. And she told him this in the hospital when she was declining. So on her deathbed,
Mm.
she was thinking about me, and that
Yeah.
answered that question that I wondered my whole life. Is she thinking about me?
Mm.
And
Hmm.
was I a secret? And
Yeah.
those are the answers that I wanted. And that again was a gift, because if I had not searched, I would not know.
Right. And did you ever meet your biological father's side?
I did not. I do have a second cousin who I text, two second cousins who I text with, but they're not close enough to know him. So my next step in the search journey, which I had to take a break from because that was a lot.
Yeah.
But my next step is to figure out, I would like to find someone who knew him. Like I found these people who knew my mother and could, I think he died very young, so I
Okay.
might not be able to find that, but that's my next goal, is to find someone who knew him, or to find more about his story, because that's still very, very cloudy to me, which is interesting because I found his information first,
First, yeah.
but um and my mother was the elusive one, but I still
Hmm.
don't have close family or anyone who knows him. I did find a third cousin who is amazing from my father's side, doesn't know my father, but welcomed me with open arms and is just so sweet. So it's been an interesting experience, and I've met some amazing people who want to help and have an open heart. and have empathy. And I am thankful for that.
Yeah. So did you find out if the story that you were told was true, that your mom left you with the babysitter? Was that
I think it was true.
okay?
Yeah, because my dad told me that she kind of left me with different babysitters, including him, until she, you know, didn't come back one time. And if I look at my adoption records, I was adopted at the age of 3. That
Mm-hmm.
means she kept me for 3 years.
Yeah.
I was not given away at birth.
Right.
She
Yeah.
tried.
Yeah.
And that breaks my heart even more because she tried.
Right.
Um, and she, she had to make a choice, but she tried. And that means everything to me.
Yeah. So you have a son,
I
and
do.
what was that like giving birth to him? Did you attach right away? Was it difficult? What was it like being a parent? Looking back on like how you raised him, do you see adoption playing a role in like your style of parenting?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would say that becoming a mother after growing up without one was one of the most amazing and fulfilling experiences that I ever had. And one of the first times I felt whole ever. Growing up with no one looking like me and never seeing my own reflection, having no genetic mirror, finally having a genetic mirror that I made myself was miraculous. I
Yeah.
mean, and I will never forget when I had my son, the doctor said, "Oh, he looks like mom," before I even saw him. And I
You're like,
remember being
what?
like,
Somebody
"Oh my
looks like
gosh,
me.
someone looks like me." Amazing. I can't believe it. And then I just fell in love when I first held him, and we bonded instantly, and we are still very, very close. And I love him so much, and he's more than a son. He's the love that made me whole.
So were you kind of overprotective then with him growing up?
100%. I hate to admit it, but it's true.
That Velcro is
Um,
still there.
exactly. It's my intense attachment. Yes. Uh, and actually, I know we're joking about it, but that was another rough time in my adoptee journey, when he decided to go to the Navy after high school and entered boot camp. I had separation anxiety. I was not ready. I was used to him being around and not being able to communicate on the phone or text or anything, except for letters, handwritten letters. It killed me. I
Yeah.
was crushed. I was so depressed, probably the most depressed I've ever been in my life. And I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out of that. And I did, but that was a very dark time. A lot of dark poetry happened during that, during that time. And that was my coping mechanism. And
Right.
I would I would come home from work and check my mailbox every day looking for a letter. And it only happened a few times, but I still have those letters
Mm-hmm.
because they meant everything to me. And then I would wait for my phone to light up, and I knew, the city where he was, looking for that city on my phone, because obviously it wasn't a cell phone, it was a landline. And I'm like waiting, and it only happened a few times, but each of those calls was amazing.
Yeah.
And when I went to his graduation from boot camp, oh my gosh, that was quite the reunion. And it was amazing. So yeah, that was very, very challenging. It definitely triggered my abandonment issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I am fortunate for my husband, who stood by me and told me it would be okay and tried to distract me, and took me to my favorite places to, to try to, and I mean, really nothing worked, but he tried. And
Yeah.
it was important. I felt like I lost everything with him being gone. And it was really weird because it was kind of scary that I could feel like that, because it wasn't just missing someone, knowing he was coming back. I felt like my brain interpreted it as a permanent loss.
Mm,
I was grieving him as if he had died, and it was
yeah.
so weird. And I was so scared that I couldn't snap out of it. And fortunately I did, but wow, that was
Wow.
a scary time because I was so attached. And that genetic mirror was, I realized when I had him, but I didn't realize, after he was in high school, that he was still playing that role in my life as my genetic mirror, and that having him in my life on a regular basis was part of my healing. And seeing him and interacting with him made me feel more whole.
Yeah.
And when I lost that, even though it was temporary, and I knew it was temporary, it's like my mind didn't, was
Couldn't
confused.
comprehend that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's tough. Dang,
It,
the grief. I can totally see that though, because that separation, because you guys were so close,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the whole time growing up and everything, all through high school. And then even in the Navy, like now he's got to go on deployments and stuff, right?
Well,
So
he is done with his contract, so he is back home, and I'm happy to have him back home here in Cleveland. So yeah, he's now he's building his life. So I'm thrilled. It's amazing. I didn't know that would happen. I thought for sure that he would just be off in other
yeah,
states, other countries. Who knows? He's very adventurous,
right.
and I can't help but wonder if he had to get away because I was so attached. I hope that's not the case, but it could be,
He's back now though, so
Yeah,
he got
yeah,
his little
no.
break, the break he needed.
Yeah, no, it's good because he needed to, you know, find his own way and be
Mm,
independent. And I'm glad that I did not stand in his way. And
right.
I knew it would break my heart, but I had to support his choice, and I had to show him support. And it was a tough decision because I had to sign for him at 17.
Mm,
And I thought I was signing his life away. And that was really hard. But he was very strong-willed. He knew what he wanted to do. He had researched it, and I had to support him. So
yeah.
I did what was right for him. And I tried to, not think about the impact on me. And then I felt it after he
Right.
left.
Well, I think having that child mother bond, you don't think that that's gonna break apart as a baby, and then it
Yeah,
does. And so with your son, I can totally see that, because yeah, he's leaving and he's coming back, but it's not promised. It's
that's
not
right.
promised. You don't
That's
know.
right.
You just don't know, and that's always in the back of your mind, I think.
Right.
So talking about the primal wound and the fog, and coming out of the fog, what helped you when you were coming out deal with that? I know your blog and writing, and was there anything else?
Yeah, I mean, other adoptees, and knowing that other people felt the same way and that I wasn't alone, and having that support. Even early in my blog days in 2019, before I started the social media channels, I had the blog. And it was it was so funny because I would write, and then I would obsessively look to see if anyone saw it. And then this one person, this other adoptee, found it. Every single time I wrote something, she commented. And I was, how they say, if you could touch one person, it's worth it. That was my one person, and that's why I kept going. So I'm
Wow.
so thankful that I connected in that way, and eventually more people found it. But that like kept me going, because I was very much self-doubting, is this going to
Mm-hmm.
matter? Does anyone care? Can I really touch someone? It was really more of a thesis that I had, that, well, if I share my story in a personal way, maybe I can connect with others. And
Yeah.
I didn't know, because I wasn't, it was my first foray into the online community. And I'm so thankful. And, now that I think about, COVID and not being in person for a long
Mm-hmm.
time, it didn't matter, because we still had each other online, and
Yeah.
our adoptee community was still engaging with each other, and it was awesome. And then in 21, I joined Fireside in the leadership team, and that is just an amplifier for those adoptee to adoptee
Mm-hmm.
connections. And I was so thrilled when Amanda Baum reached out to me and asked me to be on the leadership team. And we're still going strong. And now we have over 800 members,
Yeah.
and we have great participation in our chats. And I just love our Fireside community as a kind of a community within the overall adoptee community online. It's great. I love being a part of it, and I love seeing it grow. And so touched by everything I hear on the chats, and just
Mm-hmm.
having the honor of, listening, and people opening up and trusting us, and sharing so deeply. It's
Mm-hmm.
so important, and I can see the impact, and I love being a part of it.
Yeah. So kind of lastly, what would you like struggling adoptees to know?
Well, I think there's three things. If I kind of think about my experience and what I've learned and things that I needed to hear. The first thing is that you are not alone. It might feel like that at times. And, even if you have a supportive family, your family, only another adoptee can really understand and relate to how you're feeling. And we all have diverse experiences,
Mm-hmm.
but that's so important. So I would say, please seek out and prioritize other connections with other adoptees, because it really helps. It is one of the most powerful sources of healing that I've experienced in
Yeah.
my very long journey. Two, you don't have to be a victim of circumstances that beyond your control.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my biggest takeaways, is that sometimes we act as if we no longer have a choice, because our choice was taken away as a child, or
Yeah.
as a baby. But you know what? We're adults now, and we have a choice, and we can live the life that we deserve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important to not only realize that, but to act on it. And it
Mm-hmm.
takes a long time to get
Yeah.
there. But when you do, it's really liberating and really empowering. And that's what drives me every day, is I am living the life that I want for myself, because I'm in control now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And three, um, I think that, just being compassionate with yourself, and giving yourself grace,
Mm-hmm.
and accepting your feelings. And it's okay to feel sad. And even if you think you made a lot of progress, this journey is not linear. I mean, mine has been like this.
Yeah.
So it's a roller coaster, lots of ups and downs, but don't give up, believe in yourself, be your own best advocate, love yourself, truly love yourself. It's hard to get there, but I I want that for every adoptee,
Yeah.
that self-love, because don't look for it in other places. It I know it's cliche to say, but it's very true. And my life, it was the unlock when I started to believe in myself and realize
Mm-hmm.
that I was in control. That's when my career took off. That's when I found my new husband, and I am the happiest I've ever been. And I'm glad I searched, and I have my battle scars, but I am just really proud of myself. And I want
Yeah.
every adoptee to take the steps that they're afraid to take, because there's so much growth that can
Mm-hmm.
happen. And I want every adoptee to feel that growth, and to feel empowered that they can live the life that they want.
Yeah. So true. So you have a blog along with being affiliated with some adoptee groups. So you want to tell us where we can find those things?
Sure. My blog and my Instagram and my Facebook is all The Adoptee in Me. So The Adoptee in INME. And orange is my brand color. So when you see the orange hearts, that's me. And also Fireside Adoptees, we have a Facebook group that's private. So you have to answer a few questions. We want to know that you're an adoptee. But there's also a public group or a public page for everyone in the constellation, because that's important too. We want to engage with all of our constellation members.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Nicole. I know you had a lot of ups and downs, like you were saying, but I always say that every story, there's somebody out there waiting to hear your story, because your story is going to affect them and make them not feel so alone. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I believe that too, Melissa. I really appreciate the time. I loved our conversation.
There is so much I want to say about this interview. I want you to know I don't pick and choose who comes on this podcast. I don't pick the stories that are going to be a tearjerker or make your jaw drop. The people that come on this podcast are random people that I have run into on social media or have been sent to me from other people that I know. There are people that have become part of the Karma crew and just volunteer to come tell their story. And when Nicole was talking about when she got the message saying that they found her birth mother after searching and searching and searching and having search angels give up on the search, someone finally was able to find her. And the excitement Nicole was feeling in that moment, until she found out that her mother had passed away just a few years before. That is just heartbreaking. And that is the story of so many adoptees. Our histories, where we came from originally, is kept from us, is hidden from us, is taken from us. And we have to claw and fight and hire people and spend countless hours trying to find our origin. And to do that and find out that you were too late is unimaginable. But Nicole handles it with such compassion and grace. It's truly amazing. I'm not sure I could do the same if I was in her shoes. Thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on the show today. And thank you for spending a lot of your time helping advocate for us adoptees. And thank you all for listening. As always, take what you need and leave what you don't. And always remember to mind your own karma. I'll see you next time.